Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome back to the Clean Collective segment brought to you by Society Brands. Today's conversation is both heartbreaking and healing. It's about 14-year-old Zuza Beine, whose 11-year battle with acute myeloid leukemia defied nearly every medical statistic. And according to the National Cancer Institute, AML accounts for about only 1 in 5 childhood leukemia cases and carries a 5-year survival rate of just 29%. Yet Zuza survived over a decade, 3 bone marrow transplants later, proving that resilience isn't just a word, it's an energy. Through social media, Zuza shared her journey with millions, turning hospital rooms into windows of hope. Her passing in September of 2025 sparked a nationwide conversation about how we care for children and families facing long-term illness. And at the center of that conversation is her mother, Dr. Dagmara Beine, a clinician and researcher in integrative and functional medicine. And out of the loss, she created Zuza's Way Integrative Care, bridging traditional oncology with nutritional science, psychoneuroimmunology, and the spiritual components of healing. When you consider that roughly 1 in 285 children will be diagnosed with cancer before age 20, and that chronic stress in caregiving parents can increase inflammatory biomarkers by as much as 40%, you realize this story isn't just about survival. It's about the science of resilience and the alchemy of love. Dr. Beine, welcome to the show, superstar. It's an honor to celebrate Zuza's light and the legacy you built through her.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to go to the beginning. For most parents, milestones mean first steps or first words, not first rounds of chemotherapy. And when you look at the research from the American Psychological Association, it shows that parents of chronically ill children often experience PTSD level stress within the first year of diagnosis. So can you take us back to when you first heard Zuza's diagnosis and what those early days taught you about strength, faith, and motherhood?
Yes, I think that most families or individuals who hear the word cancer, the rug gets pulled out from underneath your feet. And especially when it's your baby, I think anybody would trade up disease for themselves instead of your baby. We were in shock. We were both in medicine. So my husband and I are both in medicine, but that did not mean we understood cancer, leukemia, the whole oncology world. And, your brain and your heart automatically go to despair and am I going to lose my baby? But very quickly, I think for most families, it turns into what can we do? How do we get through this? She's going to be a survivor. And what are all the tools that we're going to use to allow her to have the best journey?
That description is so visceral, how you overcame it and really kind of found a way to turn every moment into something meaningful and really choose to transform it into action rather than paralysis, because that's really what you've done. That's truly almost like a neurobiological miracle in itself. I mean, you've done incredible things in just the last couple of years, which brings me to Zuza's 11-year of defiance. I mean, clearly she had a very strong role model and she had a strong mama, but Zuza was never statistically supposed to make it that far. But what science can't always quantify is the almost like the placebo effect of hope. Now well documented, right, in psychoneuroimmunology, but positive expectation alone, without a doubt, modulates, that cytokine activity and enhances that immune function. And I think that had a lot to do with the way you internalized all of it. So what do you believe contributed most to Zuza's resilience? I mean, was it mindset? Was it medicine? Was it something beyond what science can measure?
Yes, I think that there's 2 things that helped Zuza defy, every odd that we were ever given. One was Zuza never just did conventional medicine. So from the beginning, and as I, changed my career to learn and know integrative oncology, Zuza always was, whatever chemotherapy or immune therapy she did, it was always supported. And she always did a lot of integrative oncology treatments and support and gut healing and nutrition, all that really made a difference in her ability to stay here longer. But her hope and her real belief always that she's going to be okay um, was the biggest thing that contributed to her being able to be here for 11 years when most children who get diagnosed with AML rarely get a cure and will die within 2 years. And she was able to just continue on, even though the last 5 years, most of those 5 years, she lived with a lot of leukemia in her body. I know it was a big shock to the world that she died, but people didn't realize how much leukemia she was actually living with because she always came on with a smile and positivity. And even when we would get distraught, her dad and I, in like, oh, like what's next? Towards her 13 and 14 year of her life, she's the one that would look at us and be like, I'm going to be okay. Like, what's the next thing?
Yeah, she spoke to millions, and what you said is so enlightening. It really underscores how the mind-body coherence, that neural immune connection, is often the missing link in modern care, and she embodied that link. It brings tears to my eyes because it's almost like this beautiful revelation within her story. It's beautiful, and I'm so honored to talk about this with you. Now let's talk about from pain to purpose. So there's a clinical term for what you've done. It's called post-traumatic growth, right? It's a documented phenomenon where grief becomes a catalyst for helping others. So what inspired you to found Zuza's Way Integrative Care, and how does your work there honor Zuza's life while supporting other families walking very similar paths?
So very early on, when Zuza was diagnosed when she was 3.5 years old, I saw how incomplete cancer care was. And it's not just for children, just in the world, really. And so I looked at the world to try to find a practitioner that could help her with nutrition, with supplements, with other integrative therapies. And I couldn't find a practitioner that would work with kids and do those things. And since I was already in medicine, I made it my mission in life to become that practitioner. And so over the 11 years that she walked this journey, I went back to school and opened a clinic that focused on integrative oncology. And during her journey and during being able to help her and support her, I also specialized and, wrote the first book on integrative oncology for pediatrics and have helped hundreds of families, adults and kids, through their own cancer journeys because I get it, right? So I came from conventional medicine. I had that really good background. I'm walking the journey. I'm able to help my daughter, and it only made sense then to help other families also walking this very hard journey. And it helped me too because there's so many beautiful kids and adults who have been my patients and are my patients who are thriving and doing amazing. Um, yeah, it's just something that I knew I had to do. It just sort of snowballed.
So the World Health Organization now recognizes integrative medicine as essential for chronic disease management, yet only about 12% of oncology clinics offer comprehensive nutritional and stress reduction support. And your approach fills that gap beautifully. So for those new to integrative medicine, what are some of the most overlooked aspects of healing, especially for children and families managing long-term illness?
Yeah. So really it's the simple things that are overlooked. We think of integrative oncology and I think a lot of people think it might be like woo-woo medicine and weird treatments, but it's really the foundation of um, getting the right sleep, getting in nature, making sure that there's safety and laughter. Nutrition is absolutely key while you're going through cancer treatment. And then of course we layer that with certain supplements. There's certain amazing herbs, high dose vitamin C, mistletoe therapy, red light therapy. There's so many things that you can take and layer on to conventional treatment to make conventional treatment less toxic and more effective. And so it's really not saying no to chemotherapy or radiation. Chemotherapy, unfortunately, was something that Zuza needed in order to be able to stay here. But being able to support that with so many other integrative therapies is what allowed her, I believe, to thrive through so many of those years.
You have knowledge is power, and I love that you were in control of that ship. And we often forget the gut brain axis and the circadian biology and environmental toxic load, that those influence everything. I mean, from cellular repair to even emotional regulation. So I love that you're teaching families to optimize biology, not just battle the disease.
Yes, yes, that's very important. I also think it's very important just to say that all those things are essential for anybody listening not on a cancer journey. Like, that is where prevention sits. It's in what we put in our body, what we put on our body, how much time we spend in nature or environment. Like, that is where true cancer prevention is, not just in the early screenings that are talked about.
Yeah, you said it. It's exactly right. It's in the prevention. Now let's chat about social media and legacy. So social media is usually criticized for disconnection, yet for you and Zuza, it became a lifeline. So how did sharing her journey publicly shape both of your families' healing and the way you view community in the digital age?
Yes, when she relapsed, for the first time, she was 9 years old. So she did not have friends, school, community. This was also around COVID time, so we couldn't have been more isolated. And so she asked if she could have a phone and if she could start recording these little videos in the hospital. A lot of people say, like, oh, well, you were a big part of it. No, we weren't. Like, it was Zuza did all that on her own. I mean, she put that camera and she was just incredibly authentic and positive, and it was such a good thing for her to be able to feel like a normal teenage girl. It eventually brought her to be part of the Glow House, which allowed her to feel like she was also a normal teenage girl talking about makeup and not just concentrating on the fact that before she did that video and after, she might be throwing up or getting platelets at the hospital or finishing a treatment.
She's definitely left a huge impact, not just on social media, but on the community that looked after her and cared for her. So this is beautiful. Now we're going to talk about the message to other parents. So parenting through illness rewires the brain. Mama, you have got your hands full, because we know those MRI studies, they show changes in the anterior cingulate and insula. It's the regions that process empathy and resilience. So if you could share one message with parents navigating fear, hospitals, and uncertainty right now, what would it be?
It's really, this sounds cliche and I used to hear it and I didn't practice it. And it took me a while through this journey to be able to practice truly staying in the moment with your child. Because the truth is, whether you're on a cancer journey or any illness journey or not, you never know how much time you have here with your loved ones. And being able to stay present in the moment and not worrying about, is she going to die? Am I going to lose my daughter? If I would have stayed there in the last couple of years, I would have missed out on the absolute most beautiful and breathtaking memories that we had the last, especially the last 3 years, especially the last couple months. And we didn't know that Zuza was, quote unquote, dying. Her death also came because she lived with so much leukemia for so long. It happened quick. She was okay, her okay on Friday. She made a video on Friday and she passed away on Monday. It was quick and sudden. Um, and so my best advice is just to stay in the moment, right? Just stay in the moment with your loved ones and make those memories, because nobody could ever take those away from you.
Yeah, that's such a universal truth, and that love is an immunologic signal too. Your message gives permission for parents to breathe again, and I think it's important. And I have a personal question for you. I mean, you don't have to answer this, but was Zuza afraid of death?
Yes, she was. And I don't know if it was more, as a 14-year-old, we talked about it, but the conversation would often end with, "But I'm going to be okay, mama. Like, I'm not dying. I'm going to be okay." And I said, "Yeah, we're okay. We're okay." I think at the end she knew, because the last 24 to 48 hours before she took her last breath at home with me, I was able to bring her into this world, and I was able help her transition out of this world. And that was beautiful in a way. I think she knew. She said things to us that were almost like these last messages, like pay attention to Finn. That's her brother. They were very close. And my parents live with us. She held my dad's hand and like told him how much she loved him, like made a point out of that. So, we told her, we gave her permission. And I think that's what she needed at the end, is like, you can go, baby. Like you can go, like we're going to be okay. And she did. And it was quick, and thank goodness, because those last 24 to 48 hours, there was a lot of suffering on her end.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And her work is not done. She's working through you. The legacy is there. The community is there. Her voice, and more importantly, she had a purpose. Like these 11 years, the 14 years, but the 11 of them, like you said, where it was just a lot of, there was a lot on the plate. Through all of this, there was an evolution that ultimately, without a doubt, is paving the way for the next generation of cancer survivors, cancer, people who are in it right now, and more importantly, research. But her will on those videos, and her love of life, and her wanting to connect with absolutely every single person that left a comment on her page when she was active. That's where I saw so much strength. I was like, this beautiful soul. And she touched me just watching her videos. I actually learned makeup tips from her. I learned how to highlight because of her. I was like, oh, she introduced me to some brands I didn't even know existed. My 9-year-old 10-year-old daughter now still follows the account. Like, she reached everyone.
Yeah, I think to myself, like, I wish I would have learned more makeup tips from her. But yes, she was a force and dearly missed. We're trying to learn how to live without her physical presence. But yes, we will continue her legacy and her message in any way that we can.
Listeners, viewers, you can learn more at zuzasway.com and follow Dagmara directly on the gram at Dagmara Beine for resources and inspiration. That's spelled Dagmara Beine. That was the Clean Collective segment brought to you by Society Brands. You're listening to A Moment of Zen, where science meets soul and stories become medicine. I'm your host, Zen Sams. We'll be right back after this.